From Hamilton Place Strategies in Washington, D.C., you're listening to a special series of the HPS Insights podcast on how to get a job in D.C., hosted by HPS partner Matt McDonald. Matt oversees recruiting at the firm and has brought together academic leaders, career experts, DC insiders, and HPS associates for a series of episodes on how to succeed in the DC recruiting process.
In our first episodes, we talked with universities about how to prepare for that academically, other stuff on campus, and then how to prepare your resume, apply for jobs in DC. Today, we're trying to do a deep dive on the other view of how people in DC think about hiring and applications, and get some good insider tips on the process generally. We have the perfect guests for this: Tom Manatos and Mo Elleithee. Tom is the vice president of government relations for Spotify and the legend behind Tom Manatos Jobs. So he is the guy on this stuff. And Mo is the executive director of Georgetown University's Institute of Politics and Public Service. So his job is to connect Georgetown students with the political and policy process in DC. So we could not have two better people for this conversation. So great to have and chat with both of you. Tom, you must have a billion networking conversations with your job site. So what are the top tips that you give people out of the gate?
Well, whether it's somebody, looking for their job straight out of college or after law school or mid-career, the question I always ask them is, what's your dream job in 2 and 5 years, and maybe even 10? Because the next job you're going to get, job or internship you're going to get, is going to help build your case for that dream job in that shorter or longer run. So even if you're coming straight out of school, you got to think, okay, what jobs are out there, first of all? What industries are out there? What do I want to do longer term? And how is this next internship or this entry-level job, even though it's not what I want to do, going to help me get to those dream jobs? So just one small example of my career, I spent 11 years both on campaigns and on Capitol Hill on the official side. And I was coming out of 11 years of Capitol Hill, and I didn't know what I wanted to do long term. So I had to pick 2 different industries I was targeting. I picked to go to a trade association over another job that, only because of that experience of that trade association, got me my dream job, which is working for Spotify, and I got to open up their DC office. So you got to think 2 and 3 steps ahead. That's one. 2, it's all about networking. Doesn't matter what fancy school you went to, or even if you didn't go to a fancy school, if you build up a network of people that know you, whether it's working through campaigns, internships, even informational coffees, informational Zooms, phone calls, that know you and can advocate for you, and that you get tips from how to find that job from them, that will help you get to those entry first jobs or the ones later down the line.
Do you guys think, I think that's true. I've always found DC to be it's a weird environment where it's one of the least structured job markets in how networked it is, but that does lend itself to a lot of possibilities and a pretty open approach to some of this stuff. I mean, you don't have to have the perfectly padded pedigree background to get jobs. You just got to kind of hustle and figure out your way through some of that stuff. Do you guys, which has its pros and cons. It's an interesting, it's different than a lot of other places that I've lived and worked.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, look, I tell people all the time, with each job, you want to do 2 things. You want to collect new skills and you want to collect new people, right? Everyone talks about DC being a place where it's all about who you know, and they say that pejoratively. Well, it is about who you know, but it's also about what you know, right? You got to do the job and be good at it, but also meet people. If you catch their attention, they will help you. Before coming to Georgetown, I spent 20 years working on political campaigns, which means every single year I was looking for a new job and I was hiring a bunch of people. And I don't think this is that much of an exaggeration. I had a resume for my first 2 jobs, and I didn't need a resume again until Georgetown made me write one for this job. Because what I was doing was I was going out, working on these campaigns, hustling, and meeting people. And that network was helping me get the next campaign. I could call people up and say, hey, this is the next campaign I want to work on. Or eventually I got to a point in my career where people were just calling me saying we were about to announce and, can we talk to you? So the network is critical. Collect new skills. Every job you take, you should be learning something new and pushing yourself, and collect new people and stay in touch with them, because that's going to make all the difference in getting your foot in the door.
I think Matt Rhodes has, I think his take on this is that like campaigns especially, but DC in general, is like, it's helpful thinking about it like the coaching trees in the NFL, where like you figure out, oh, okay, so they worked for this person and that means they know this. And like, that's how people think about recruiting on campaigns, which, the churn on that stuff is fast. Like, I think I had, by the time I was 30, or by the time I left for business school, I think I had like 8 jobs in my 20s, because you just crank through these things.
That's right. And I think campaigns are a great opportunity to learn a bunch of new stuff, get a ridiculous amount of responsibility for your age, because everyone's underpaid and not experienced. And then on Mo's point of gathering people, like some of my best friends in politics are from when I was one of the youngest people on the Gore campaign at the headquarters in Nashville, Tennessee. And they're all littered all throughout politics. And I've relied on them. They've relied on me throughout. And that was when I turned 21 on a campaign. And each time when I was volunteering at a campaign in my mid-20s, a guy came for a walk packet, and I knew he was an important Capitol Hill official, and I paid attention to him and, treated him well, and he saw me working my butt off. He ended up being my chief of staff 2 years later for Speaker Pelosi. So like, you never know who you're going to interact with on campaigns in a volunteer capacity, at an internship, that you're gathering those people, you're proving to those people that you work hard and you pay attention to detail and you're nice to everybody. And that's just going to pay dividends and keep building that network of people that know your work, and are going to be able to advocate for you. One other thing, and it's on my website, it's an article I wrote on 11 key networking tips, is you got to be organized though. Like, keep track of these people, write notes of the conversations you've had. If it was an informational coffee, that's right. On that campaign, I took down the name John Lawrence. He was the head of the Education and Workforce Committee. And I took down the notes so that when he was going to be my chief of staff, I looked back like, oh my God, that is the guy that I was doing walk packets with. And I reminded him how I worked hard on that campaign, and he remembered it too. So you got to be organized at that people collection, and so that you can turn back to it at a later time to help you out.
How much do you guys think that, in thinking about, like, it's an interesting balance in my mind in some respects between, like, I think it's true that it is helpful to know where you want to go and what you want to pursue and where you want to end up. And at the same time, there's a vibe on some of these things of like, you got to be ready to chip in and do whatever. And I mean, even on campaigns, it's like, great, you're hired, be in X place on Monday. How should people coming in think about balancing, opportunities and just a willingness to dive in with the build in your personal story and how that contributes to where you want to be long term? What's the tension there?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a tension. It's a balance. My advice is, I agree with Tom, like, kind of have a sense as to where you want to be. But sometimes you don't know, particularly early in your career. You may have like a sense, a general sense, right? Like, I want to do comms, so I want to do communications, but I don't know, like, am I a campaign person? Am I a Hill person? Do I want to go the industry route? You may not even know you want to do comms, right? You may just know, I want to do campaigns, but I don't know where I fit in. Get your foot in the door is my first piece of advice, right? So number one, get your foot in the door and do that through your network, do that by just your hustle and willingness to kind of do whatever. Number two is be willing to do whatever. Be humble early in your career, right? I don't care where you went to school. I don't care what your GPA was. I don't care about any of that. What I want to know is, are you going to come in and do the clips? And are you going to do it well? And are you going to do it with a smile? And when you're done at 5:30 in the morning, are you going to come back and ask for more? That's what I want to see. What I love, and the real standout young people throughout my career who went on to do great things, are the people who did that. They came in, and I have no idea where they went to school. They just came in and they worked hard and they did whatever I threw at them. And then they came back and they asked me for more. And if by chance I didn't have more to give them, they went to one of my colleagues in another department and said, hey, when I knock off today at 9 p.m., is there any way I'm interested in field. I'm interested in finance. I just kind of want to learn more about it. Can I come? Is there anything I can do to help you out? Right? That willingness to go and expose yourself and put yourself out there and do whatever is asked of you. Those are the people that when the next thing comes along, right? My budget opens up and suddenly now I need an extra press assistant. That person stood out to me. Or when I'm on the next campaign and I need someone, I remember this person and I don't have a time to do this huge long search. That person worked hard. I'm gonna go to them.
You also learn a lot with those little things too that sometimes people don't necessarily appreciate in abstract, but like, when you're doing those little things, if it's like putting together the clips or whatever, formatting matters, like proofing matters, like you're reading all the stories, you're learning the stuff. It has a real, it has like a Mr. Miyagi wax on, wax off. Like they don't know exactly how much they're learning until like things start moving fast to it. But like the jobs that people might think, or the tasks that people might think about little aren't little. I mean, they ladder up and it matters over time.
Yeah, that's so important. And you can't, on the humble side, like always be humble. But like, look, I've titled Vice President of Government Relations for Spotify. People probably think I have some huge team and I'm moving chess pieces around. Guess what? My memo writing skills are only good because I was trained by Nancy Pelosi that I better not have any errors and that I better have all that information in there. And then I got to write in a short, succinct way. So that when I got to Spotify and I wrote a memo for an executive in my first couple of months, she said, this is the best memo I've received ever. And you're leading me around DC like it's incredible. But all that's because of my campaign training and as a staff assistant and as junior and like, man, why did I go to college, do all this like grunt work? Well, Mo's right. You learn all these skills that end up being valuable later on in your career, even when you have a fancy title. You're still doing the same type of work. And even if you're having other people on your team do it for you or with you, you're also taking learnings from those sometimes jobs that seem unimportant and busy work to help you later in the future. And let me just go back to one other point that I said you have to have that plan when you're going for any level of job. It's only to help you figure out where you're going to aim your resources. Yeah, you can pivot 10 different times in your career. That's okay. And it's okay to not know where the hell you want to go. But when you're going to somebody to help you network your way to a job or an internship, you got to give them some direction. To say, oh, you want to go to Capitol Hill? Oh, my friend just started there. They're a staff assistant, or my friend's a legislative director. I'll put you in touch with them. You can't just say, I want to come to DC. I want a job. Well, where? I don't know. What industry? I don't know. Do you want to work on Capitol? I don't know. Like you have to have answers. And that's why I guess in the beginning, I was trying to say like, try to figure out where you want to end up in a couple of years and that'll help inform your process.
One of the things the tips that I give in like when I have networking chats with people is like, I literally tell them to read like Politico Influence for a week and just write down every kind of person and organization that's mentioned in it. Just write it down. Like then, over a week or whatever, you're going to get a list of 50 places. Then go Google them, look them up, read about them, figure out what they do. And then rinse and repeat. I feel like we all know this having worked in DC for a while, but there's like an aspect of like on the outside, you don't know what you don't know. And how do you even start? How do you start networking? Like, how do you even figure out the places of what the jobs are or what you could be interested? That's hard for people.
It is. And, look, there are some places, I think you're right? Like Political Playbook, read that every day and start at the bottom, right? Because at the bottom is where they talk about like people who are moving jobs or big moves in their life. Start, right? Read Punchbowl every morning. There's a handful of those types of morning tip sheets that are really DC insidery, but they help you begin to identify the individuals or the places that are interesting and are having movement. One of the things I also do, once you make that first connection, I always tell people, whenever a Georgetown student comes into my office hours and wants advice on career advice, I always say to them, do not leave this meeting with me until you've asked me for 2 more names of people that you think I should, that I think you should talk to. When you have these sorts of informal, informational interviews or just networking meetings, and you've done what Tom's suggested, right? Kind of identify the general direction that you're interested in. At the end of the meeting, ask them, are there 2 people you think I should talk to? Why? And would you mind connecting me? Worst they're going to say is no, but it's no sweat to me to be like, hey, I just met this interesting young person. They're interested in learning more. I told them that you were the smartest person in the world. And so I'll leave it to the 2 of you from here. The person that I connect that young student with is incredibly flattered, right? Let's be honest. We all have egos in this town. We all love to be.
I think I have done this to both of you at one time or another.
Right. I'm sure the 3 of us have done this to each other, right? It's a vicious cycle, but we all love to be talked about. We all love to be, flattered and to be told that we're the smartest person in town. So you butter me up like that, I'm gonna be happy to be connected and share my sage advice, yada, yada, yada. So it's always a good idea for someone who's just getting started to ask the person they're meeting with who else they should talk to. And eventually, it'll click, it'll connect somewhere along that line, right? I'll pass someone's resume on to somebody else. And then a month later, I'll get an email from Tom Manatos saying, hey, I know someone that's looking for this. And I'll remember that person that I passed along. Or someone along that trail will remember that person. So that's always a helpful trick, I think.
Tom, what's your take for people who are at 0, right? It's we're talking about networking and being willing to do the hard jobs and stuff, but someone's not at Georgetown in the mix on this stuff. They're at UGA or something and they like this stuff, but they're just not immersed in it. What do they do?
First of all, don't hesitate. Realize that the chief of staff of the White House, the senior advisors around the president, the press secretary at the White House at the podium, they were all in your shoes. No one knew anyone at some point. So have the confidence that when you're asking somebody, even a cold email, a cold call, that we've all been there. And there's a very, very pay it forward mentality in this town where, yeah, I'm going to help you out because someone else helped me out in the beginning. But when you have a 0 calculation, you go find people who share a common thread with you. So where are you from? Everyone's from somewhere else. Even those of us like me that are from here, I feel closer to people that are locals because there are so few locals that I'm going to help out a local more than I'm Greek American. Any young Greek American that comes to me, I help them out immediately a little bit more because we share that common ethnicity, that bond. Common fraternity, sorority, ethnicity, religion, college. So even though you went to the undergrad, you can reach out to somebody that went to that law school, that same university. Hey, we're both Bobcats or whatever, that they're a little more likely to help you. And then perfect advice from Mo at the end of every one of those conversations. He says 2, I say 1. Ask, is there one other or 2 other people that you could connect me with? When you finish that conversation with that individual you just asked, you follow up with an email saying, thank you for the conversation. And you attach your resume every single time. Because I can't tell you how many people have gotten jobs just by, you did a coffee with Mo. Mo didn't realize he has an opening coming up. Someone quits and he turns back to his inbox with, oh my gosh, that young woman I met with is perfect for this job. And you get that job. And the job was posted not on my website, anywhere. It's only because you had your resume in that person's inbox. And then it makes it easier for that individual when you do that coffee with Mo that you can just forward your resume and say, hey, Tom, can you do a coffee with this young woman? Her resume is attached. Great. Yes. Right. And then again, going back to the organization, you're keeping track of every single one of these that you do. And then when you get that internship or job, people love it when you email them and say, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your advice. Thanks for connecting me with Mo. And by the way, I got this internship and it's all due to you. And even though it's not, it's partially due to you, your great advice you gave me. And make sure you send those emails like directly after you said yes and you signed the contract or agreed to your start date, before it's in political influence, before it's in playbook, make sure the people that helped you get there, just get a quick email saying, thanks so much for your help. I got this job. I got this internship. And that helps cement that bond between you and that person, that they can come back to you for favor or help later, that you can go back to them in 1 or 2 years when you're looking for your next job. And that it's, again, all in that spreadsheet that you're keeping track of all these people that have,
it's not hard. It's just like being disciplined about it too.
And one of the asks for that other connection, it might be like Mo might have talked to you about environmental policy. He might connect you to Earl Blumenauer's LD, who's big on environmental policy, or he might connect you to somebody from the University of Houston, which is somewhat of your background.
Beauty of this town is, I mean, people I talk to outside of Washington are always shocked when they realize how much of this town is run by young people, right? I mean, like your congressional chief of staff is in their 30s, right? Your legislative directors in their late 20s. Like this town is run by young people. So it doesn't take long for you to really rise in this town. And so that makes what Tom's talking about even more important, right? People change jobs very quickly. You know, I stuck around. I had gray hair when I finally stepped off the partisan battlefield. That you know, I was ancient by the time I did it, right? Most people leave long before they get as much gray hair as I have. So keeping up with those people is really important, because the next opening is going to come along really, really quickly. And you can get from 0 to, you know, a communications director role or a legislative director role, or even a chief of staff in 5, 6, 7 years after being at 0. But it's going to require you not just doing well at the job, but managing that network really, really, really well.
What do you guys, I love the always send your resume along tip. What do you guys, when in this space, what have you guys historically looked for in resumes?
Mo, you want to take that since you've done more hiring than I have?
It kind of depends on what I'm looking for, frankly. But what I'm looking for is, particularly for like an entry level position, obviously it's entry level, so it's not going to be a ton of experience. But what I am looking for is someone who has filled their time with something that's relevant to me, if that makes sense, right? Like, so you might not have worked on a bunch of campaigns. You're looking for your first campaign gig, but I don't care what your academic background is, right? Like, I skip over that section. If it's at the top of your resume, I skip over it. I make a glance at it, see if you went to Georgetown or not. But otherwise, like, I don't care. But if you were involved in college Democrats or college Republicans, that tells me something. If you wrote for your school newspaper and you're interested in a communications job, that tells me something, right? If the employment history is less important to me as just some sort of relevant history, at least in the resume. Now, the other thing though, separate from the resume, I really, really read cover letters. Like, I read cover letters super closely.
We're gonna separate on this question.
Well, and I'll tell you why. Because if it's a cookie cutter cover letter, right, where it's just cut and paste and swap out the name of, like, I can tell, right? But if your cover letter references this job or this place or this candidate or this and the mission behind it, or just something that says, I actually really want to come work for you, or I really want to come work there, that is going to catch my attention than just the person who has the cut and paste job. If your cover letter talks more about you, or is only talking about you and not talking about us, that's a red flag for me, right? Like, I don't want you to sit there and like kiss up to me, but I want to know you are invested. I want to see the passion that you have to come work here. And you can show that in a cover letter if you do it right, if you're smart about it.
I totally endorse the like writing for a school paper or something. Writing is extremely important in this business, but I've found that academic writing and writing in DC are very different exercises. And
oof, yeah,
like a newspaper or college publication where you are writing to be understood as opposed to kind of academic ease type of stuff is super, super helpful, especially as it like just an indicator of some base level skill there. Very helpful and important. I also think like there's lots of ways to just demonstrate through your activities interest, enthusiasm, and passion for something of just like, yeah, you get involved in the different pieces and no one wants to hire anyone into these jobs where you have to motivate them to do the job. Like that is not what DC stuff is about. People have to bring their own enthusiasm, their own interest. If someone doesn't want to be doing this, they're never going to read the extra paper. They're never going to like be following this stuff themselves. And like, this stuff it's hard enough as it is. You don't want to like, especially with the stakes of some of the work and the jobs and all the rest of the stuff is like, you don't want to have to coax them into motivation. That's at the bottom of the list of things that you need in your day to day.
And one thing I'll add is just whether it's the resume or the cover letter, you need to gear it towards the job you're applying for. So don't tell me that you wrote for the school newspaper when, that's not in the job description. In this case, it usually would be, but that's a bad example. But like, you need to tailor each resume and each cover letter to the individual job itself. Or if you're not paying that attention to detail and doing that extra work, you're not going to pay attention and do the extra work in your job. It's the one shot you have to that future employer. There better not be typos. Have everyone and your mom read your resume for typos. Especially when you're applying to a job, do not put another employer's name in there, just like Mo said. Double, triple check everything. And then, when you have that base resume that you're working from, tailor it to that job. So if there's a different job of a staff assistant, when you're the front of the office, you're answering the phone, you're giving tours, you're managing interns, as opposed to a legislative correspondent when you're writing a lot of letters. So bump up your newspaper writing, bump up your thesis that you wrote in college, and emphasize those writing skills when you're applying for a writing job, as opposed to when you're a staff assistant, you understand that a lot of more people interaction. So maybe talk about how you were a community representative for a campaign that you went door to door. Those are more applicable to that job. So tailor those resumes to those different jobs. And you can have a bunch of different resumes that you just pull out and as you're going to each job, but show the time and care that you put into it. Because when I'm a hiring manager and I have like 2 seconds to review every resume, I'm gonna look, and as Mo said, I'm gonna skip the education because no offense, I don't care about your degrees or what you studied, but I want you to see a real world experience out, even if it's working at a Chick-fil-A and you were the community person doing, campus outreach for Chick-fil-A, that is applicable to my campaign job that I'm hiring for.
I do.
And so if I see that, I'm going to put it in the right pile.
I do love just a sprinkling of food service on the resumes. Like you learn solid life lessons. We had someone we hired at HPS some years ago who had done baggage handling in an airport, and I was like, oh yeah, that's they're gonna hustle.
No, totally. I mean, look, there's a certain humility that comes along with this, right? Like, and it's hard. It's a hard adjustment for a lot of people who may have been like, crushing it in college and they're sort of top of their class or they're head of whatever extracurricular, right? Or they're just sort of, big person on campus. And now you're stepping out into this big world where you gotta understand and you gotta express your willingness, to do the little things. The fact when you show me that, right, that sticks out. That sticks out to me. The fact that you're willing to do whatever we need, because in this town, that is one of the single biggest commodities for any office, any campaign, any political organization, any advocacy group. They got a lot of big thinkers already, and I get it. You want to be one of them, but you're not going to be first, right? They need people who are willing to hustle. So show them, right? Show them your ambition, but show it humbly and show them that you are willing to do what it takes. So yeah, put that stuff that's on your resume, but show me how it's relevant. And then you're going to catch my attention.
What's when you guys think about like that first rung of the ladder in DC, And so if someone's coming to DC from wherever in the country, do you guys, what is your school of thought on like move to town, crash on someone's couch and start like pounding the pavement and doing meetings? Obviously, like we're in COVID now, so it's rule book out the window, but how should people think about, I mean, because like in DC, it does have this quality of like, it feels like you got to be here to do, I mean, we're talking a lot about networking. It feels like it's helpful to be here to like normally do the coffees and that sort of stuff. Maybe some of that'll change, but like, how do you counsel people on who are cautious on like diving in headfirst to the deep end of like moving across the country and doing the thing? Because one of the challenges, part of the reason that we're doing this series, it's May, people are going to graduate soon. People who have the aspiration to do this work are going to be thinking about it. What do you counsel people on that score?
Pre-COVID, I was always telling people to come to town. And I think I'd still say that because things are going to slowly start opening back up. You know, I helped somebody get a job just because they were on my kickball team. And I never would have met this individual had it not been for the silly social kickball. You're not able to go to the California State Society get softball game and happy hour if you're in another town, if you're back in Sacramento. Like, get out here, get meeting people. It's actually shockingly a small town in the sense that like people you run into, you interact with are at many of the different areas that you could possibly work in. So it helps to be here. And in-person coffee is so much more effective in terms of that person getting to know you and you striking up a relationship than a phone call. And I understand phone calls and Zooms are only, limited availability these days, so get them done. But the cost is the biggest inhibitor. If you're able to crash with somebody else, great. If you're able to acquire a paid internship that at least gives you some income to pay that lease note while you're looking for your permanent job, great. And then there's a whole different set of things you can do remote, but yeah, being in person is I think a lot better.
I actually usually avoid answering this question because I don't think there is a right answer to it. I think that you can go a couple of different ways. Totally agree with everything Tom just said. Totally agree with it, right? There is a lot to be said about just being present and the opportunity to bump into someone that helps you get that first break. Huge value to that. At the same time, one of the big pieces of advice I always give to young people, and I don't think it's universal advice, but if your goal is to end up in Washington, start your career outside of Washington. I do think there is a huge value to getting, first of all, getting experience in this kind of work in a smaller pond somewhere. Going to work in a state capital, going to work on a local campaign, going to work for a local advocacy organization or a statewide advocacy organization. You're going to get the same skills, likely going to have more responsibility earlier in your career, and you're going to be developing an important network because everyone in Washington are talking to people out in the states and out in the local communities. So I do think there is some value to that. And I will be honest, I mean, I look at it through a purely political prism, right? That's what my career was in. But if I was hiring for campaigns don't happen in Washington, right? Partisan politics, party politics don't happen in Washington, even though they're headquartered here. It happens in every other community. If you want to learn how to do politics, get as far away from DC first, then come here. And if I see you have that experience, I must have worked on campaigns for 10 years before I landed the big DC jobs, right? I would always come back to DC in between and do something. But it wasn't until, I had, and not everyone needs to work on campaigns for 10 years. But my point is, like, people saw me as a senior level campaign operative, even though I hadn't spent much time in DC, because I had all this experience out in the field. That matters a lot, having some sort of field experience.
I worked at the state level too before coming to DC, and I'm not sure it was by choice, but you're making me feel better about how I approached it at the beginning.
I think you come to this town just knowing more. If you have, if the closer you are to people, right? I mean, this town is still a town that is about people around the country. That's what we're at least all here, regardless of what we're doing. That's why we're supposed to be here. And to be able to show that you've got that experience doing it at that level, Now, again, I don't think there is a right answer. I think for everybody, it's a little bit different. And I think you can be just as successful crashing on a friend's couch and hitting the free reception circuit until you meet the right, connection. You can be just as successful doing that as you can working out in the States. So you shouldn't feel bad. You shouldn't be freaked out either direction, but there is value to both.
Can I just give a chime in on campaigns? So remember, elected officials care about three things: re-election, re-election, and re-election. And this town runs on the government. Like 90% of the jobs in this town have some touch to the government. So understanding how people get here. So whether you're a member of Congress, whether you're Mayor Pete coming in as a cabinet secretary, whether you're an ambassador that is here because somebody back home in their home country was elected and appointed you to the ambassadorship. People get here because of elections. So understanding how people are elected to office in a democratic society, what moves voters, what drives people's beliefs and reason to go into that voting booth, that is central to this town. So I think that's incredibly, incredibly important. And oftentimes, if your candidate wins, that's your ticket to DC. Or even if your candidate doesn't win, like mine didn't win, but it opened doors later down the road because all these people I worked on a campaign were elsewhere.
It's such a good perspective. And even if you are the wonkiest of wonky policy people who love diving into the numbers and the rationale and the theory, you can't get it done. You can't explain it to people. It doesn't matter. You just so much more effective if you're a multi-tool player in DC.
100%.
Guys, this has been an awesome conversation. I want to suggest, ordinarily, we should take our own medicine and suggest 2 more people to talk to, but there's only so many of these podcasts that we're going to do. So I want to suggest that we conclude with gratuitous self-promotion of the different pieces and organizations that you're part of now. Like let's bring it home to the pieces of like what you guys are trying to do at Georgetown, or Tom, like the job board and how you think about that. Like how does that all that apply? Like we've just gone through all the theory and the advice and all that good stuff, but like, what are you guys trying to do at your institutions? Because you're very much at the center of this process. Like, what are those resources that you're typically offering to your constituencies, and how do you think about that? I'll start with the HPS side. We're weird because we do fall recruiting, so we're not a like kind of come to town type of thing. And then we have a real like structured recruiting program and case interviews and all this sort of stuff. But we're looking for the types of stuff that we've just gone through and talked about. And like we as a firm touch on all these places. You have to have we're looking for demonstrated interest. You have to have the interest and aptitude for the different pieces. We love writers, we love communications, but we love people who get into the substance and get into the weeds. One of the things that we try to do for the people who are coming into our shop though, is like we do probably all the stuff that we talked about in terms of like diving in deep and getting experience early is all true, but we also try and do a lot more training at the front end, this is one thing that I would say, regardless of job, is like, look for learning opportunities and go find people that you will learn from in your first job. Cause that's where the ball game is. You want to develop your skills and be more effective.
Yeah. Tom Manatos Jobs, the whole reason we started this is just to get the word out about jobs. So whether it's Capitol Hill, executive branch, private sector, campaigns, we're pushing out as many jobs on a bipartisan basis as possible. Yeah, I worked for Nancy Pelosi, but my wife worked for President George W. Bush. And we've helped our friends throughout this process. And yes, networking is important, but you also got to find out about the job. So every morning at 9:15, an email comes out from Tom Manatos Jobs, a free email with all the jobs that have been posted in the last jobs and internships that have been posted in the last 24 hours. So you get that every morning, sign up for it. It's free automatically. And then if you want the full job posting, you want to apply to one, it's $5 a month or cheaper if you sign up longer. And then also where this podcast will be hosted is on a page of resources where there are videos of how to get a job in an administration, how to get a job on Capitol Hill. There's a full list of all the different individual job boards per agency, even on the RNC and the DNC, you name it, in government. So it's just a one-stop shop for finding out about jobs that are being posted in DC. and then layering on top of that the advice about networking. So, this is why it's like, it's not a partisan thing. We're all helping each other out. Like, help all my wife's friends after Bush lost and Obama won. It was so hard to get a job. Same with all the people from Hillary land and Obama land that thought Hillary was going to be president when Trump was president. I was helping all them find jobs. And so it's just cyclical. It happens all the time. So it doesn't matter if you're Democrat, ask a Republican for advice or vice versa, and just find out about the jobs and network your way there.
Yeah, and for us at the Georgetown Institute of Politics and Public Service, we're at a university. A lot of the community we serve is the Georgetown community, but we really do try to open up most of what we do. Our goal is to bridge the divide between academia and the applied politics, the practical world of politics. So we do a lot of the discussions and big think about how the political process should work better, but we bring in the practitioners to have this conversation as opposed to the political scientists to have this conversation with our students. But even more importantly, what we're trying to do is give these students not just the opportunity to think these big thoughts, but as we were talking about earlier, learn some practical skills and create the beginning of a network. And so by putting practitioners, whether they're big name journalists or big name Hill staffers or campaign operatives, in a room with students for regular conversations and clinics and workshops, the goal is for them to sort of get a little bit of dirt under their fingernails and actually get a taste of what this looks like. But then those first few people that they can call for those informational coffees. And like I said, a lot of what we do is open to anybody in the community. So anyone can come and sit down on these conversations.
Awesome. Guys, thanks for making the time. This has been a great conversation.
Thanks for hosting it.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the HPS Insights podcast, produced by Hamilton Place Strategies. For the latest updates, follow us on Twitter at HPS Insights and follow us on the web at hamiltonplacestrategies.com.